Why not wait till Sunday? Why not wait to these negotiations between US and Iran? Some are saying that US and Iran were close to reaching a deal. Trump was very optimistic about those negotiations prior to the attack. And the argument that's being made there is Israel was not happy with that deal, and Israel thought it was not enough, and that's why they struck the targets on I think it was Friday.
Friday, yeah, you're correct. Friday. I think they were not close to making a deal. And a small detail was that the president of the United States gave an ultimatum. He gave it to the Iranians 63 days ago. He said, I give you, the Iranians, 60 days, 2 months to negotiate, and I will do everything I can in order to bring this about in a peaceful way. I, President, prefer this to go down the peaceful way. But the Iranians thought that they could draw out negotiations and that they could do. And by the way, they are excellent. And I say this with the most simple intentions, without cynicism. The Iranians are excellent at negotiating. They are four-dimensional chess players, and they do it very well. They've been doing it very well for many years. But now they ran out of runway. Basically, what the US said, what President Trump and his team said was, we are not going to allow you to enrich any material on Iranian soil. Why? Because we don't trust you. Why? Because you've been hiding and obfuscating and obstructing the work of international supervisors before. And if Iran can enrich on Iranian soil, they will have enough material to enrich in order to achieve a bomb. And we're not going to allow it. You, Iran, are not going to have nuclear weapons, period. Now, if Iran would have come and said, okay, we don't like it, it's not what we want, but okay, we understand that now is really business time, and we're going to agree to it. Then there would have been a deal, and it would have been quick, and I think that President Trump actually preferred that. But they didn't. They thought that they can continue to obfuscate, and I think a very important milestone was the Atomic Agency report that came out just a day and a half before Israel's strike, which says very clearly, by the way, it is a groundbreaking, unprecedented report by the highest levels of the Board of Governors of the Atomic Agency, saying very clearly the Iranians are not in compliance with their obligations. They are hiding, they are lying, and that they have enough enriched uranium to produce 10 nuclear bombs. And that, I think, was the last straw. If you ask why Israel attacked, that was the last straw that made it unequivocally clear that Iran was indeed sprinting towards a bomb, and that from an existential point of view, Israel needed to take action.
One thing Israel said, and your current spokesperson Nadav Shoshani said the same thing in my interview 2 days ago, is that Iran was days away from a nuclear weapon. But Israel's been saying this for a long time. Do you really think Iran was that close to having a nuclear weapon?
I don't know. I don't know. I know it's been said by Israeli officials, by the Prime Minister, and by many others. I don't know, because I don't see raw intel, and I don't understand enough about nuclear physics and advanced metal and applied sciences. I know that the Iranian regime wants a nuclear weapon. And I know that the Iranian regime wants to annihilate the state of Israel. Those are two clear things that I know. About the timing, it could be that it's imminent, just days, and it could be that it would take them longer. From my perspective, it's less important, because the two first things that I know, and they are confirmed, that they want to destroy Israel and that they're trying to achieve nuclear weapons, they in themselves are enough for Israel to take preemptive action in order to defend itself. So whether the timing is a week, a month, or more than that, I think it's impossible to verify. You'd have to get the former head of the nuclear program on a chair, interrogate him, and then he would be able to say, oh yes, we were indeed a week away or a month away. Other than that, who knows? It's a complex process, but what we do know, based on what the Atomic Agency is saying, what US intelligence suggests, what Israeli intelligence suggests, is that they were indeed sprinting towards it. And I think this triggered a lot of fear in Israel that we have to take action now, otherwise it will definitely be too late.
You also talked about Russia weakening. How involved could Russia get, or even China? So Iran is part of BRICS. the Belt and Road Initiative goes through. Iran is very involved in that, and Russia has also got a defense pact with Iran. Could they sit back and watch Israel destroy Iran's capabilities for the next couple of weeks without being involved in any way?
The short answer is I think that they will. I think Russia for its reasons and China for its reasons. Russia is, as you know very well from your reporting and how you've covered the situation in Ukraine, Russia is tremendously preoccupied with trying to fight against Ukraine. And I don't think that they have any resources to spare, even though Russia is a superpower with lots of resources. But in terms of military and fighting capabilities, I don't think that Russia has the capacity to start fighting in the Middle East, especially not when the Iranians are losing. It would be a totally different endeavor for the Russians to join in a winning fight. But this is, from a Russian perspective, really a steep climb. The current situation, militarily speaking, from an Iranian and Russian perspective, that would be a very, very steep climb. And I don't think that Russia would have an interest in doing so. And the Russians are smart, they're strategic. I think they can do very advanced calculations. And I think their conclusion would be that it wouldn't be worth the effort because it's not going to be successful. China is on a, competing at the top global level with the US, but China has a lot of other issues that is preoccupying. China has internal issues in terms of their economy, and they have a few restive areas as well. And I think that from a military perspective, they have done tremendous build-up and production of military capabilities. But I think that in terms of timing, they're looking more towards 2 or 3 years into the future when they will achieve some kind of parity with the US and when they won't be weaker than the US in terms of what they have. For China to go in to fight now on behalf of Iran, they have no religious ties, they have no social ties, it's just interests and economic ties. But for China to risk a lot of things by going into a war that is ongoing, which might trigger US involvement, I know that the Chinese are very careful and conservative in their use of force, and they are not, I don't think that they're very adventurous. They are aware of how dangerous war is. Yeah. I don't see them doing that. It would be a very big surprise if the Chinese did. I also think that it would be a mistake for them. Just think about the logistics for the Chinese to be able to project force in that region. They don't really have the assets in terms of logistics and firepower to be able to project force and to sustain it in that area of the world. Sure, they can operate diplomatically, they can do things at the UN, but active participation in war fighting, I don't think so. And I think that as much as Iran would have wanted allies to come to its rescue, it's not going to happen, especially not since Israel was so successful in the first few days of the war.
Do you think Iran or do you think China or Russia could use diplomatic strategies? For example, China leveraging the tariff negotiations with the US to try to, twist the US's arm in ending the Israeli attacks on Iran, or at least trying to end the Israeli attacks on Iran, or Russia trying to leverage the peace negotiations when it comes to Ukraine. Could those play a role in what's happening in Iran?
Yeah, I think that they will. I think that what you say is correct. Those two countries, those two superpowers will try to do that. But I think at the end of the day, Iran is, the Islamic Republic of Iran is a country that causes a lot of trouble. I think the key here will be for the US to provide other solutions in terms of Iranian oil production and to ensure that China has access to oil that they need, which Iran won't be able to produce. I think that's Iran's main importance in Chinese eyes. About 10%, as far as I know, of Chinese consumption of oil comes from Iranian imports. That is important, and I think that is where the battle will be. Diplomatically speaking, yes, Russia and China have power and influence. They are big and strong countries. The US is stronger, and the US president, judging from what he's saying and doing, I think he's fully on Israel's side, and he's 100% on America's side. And I think that defeating Iran is an American interest, and therefore the US president will, I think, be pretty tough against any such efforts by the Chinese or the Russians.
What are your thoughts on Iran's military response so far? Most experts, I remember I was with former Marine Scott Ritter. We were doing an interview, and the attack was happening live. And, in that interview, he said he expects to see a few waves, at least 2,000 missiles fired, for Iran really to have a decisive impact on Israel. I think we saw about 200, 250 of them. Some of them have landed, so they were able to penetrate Israel's air defense system. However, many would see it as limited, and that includes the last two attacks. Do you think that was intentional by Iran because they do not want to escalate things, whatever more they can be escalated? For example, for Israel to strike all of Iran's oil refineries, or do you think this is their capabilities being eroded by Israel?
More the latter. Israel has focused its efforts on Iran's air defenses in order to allow itself operational freedom of movement in Iranian skies. That is what's happening now. Targets in Tehran are being attacked by Israeli Air Force at will. Nothing is safe for the Iranian regime, and it's a matter of an Israeli choice where to attack and where not to attack. And that is a very significant situation. Israel has also focused its efforts on the main bottlenecks, and the bottlenecks of Iran's ability to fire rockets and missiles at Israel, specifically missiles. And Israel has taken out a substantial amount of the launchers. The launchers, at the end of the day, are the real bottleneck here. And yes, Iran has had thousands of missiles before the war started. Now they have significantly less, and they don't have access to many of those because Israel took certain measures to prevent access, and Israel has taken out a lot of the launchers. Sadly, we see that the Iranian weapons are still very potent. They've been able to kill Israeli civilians. They've been able to strike civilian locations in central, northern, and southern Israel and cause civilian deaths. They have not been able to inflict any significant damage on military infrastructure, on our air bases, on our ports, or anything else, and we know that they've tried. And in short, I would say that the Iranian response has been underwhelming. We did indeed expect more, and I think Israel is still anticipating Iran to try to do more. As we're speaking, after the Iranians, just a few hours ago, the Iranians fired a salvo of ballistic missiles and most likely also cruise missiles. And what Israel, of course, is doing in retaliation is locating those launchers, and then the next wave of Israeli strikes will be against those launchers, and that will degrade Iranian capabilities further. At the end of the day, I think after 2 days, soon 3 days of fighting, there is no parity between the Israeli situation and the Iranian situation. The Iranians were caught by surprise. Much of their military leadership was taken out. Much of their military infrastructure was taken out. Their air defenses have been decapacitated, and they are exposed and vulnerable. What they still retain is the ability to choose which way to go, if to escalate more or to de-escalate. And that's up to the Iranians. So far, it looks as if they're not willing to de-escalate, and they're trying to escalate and retaliate.
How can they de-escalate? Iran, because I feel like they're in a position where I'm sure you agree, they have to defend themselves. They have to react somehow to show some sort of strength to their people. They're being attacked. If they want to escalate until they strike US bases,
can
they not attack? But would you expect the country to just be struck and not attack? I think it's almost unheard of.
But the cold strategic calculation is this: the Iranians know that Israel wants to take out their nuclear military program. And what Israel started striking was their nuclear military program. And I think that had the Iranians not retaliated against Israel and basically made a painful, very difficult decision not to retaliate, which they are entitled to. We are attacking them. The Iranians are entitled to retaliate. It's okay, but I'm discussing the wisdom of doing so.